Now you may wonder what this particular image is going to communicate to you, but actually what I want to do is come back now to the fact that we do have over 23 different countries at this event. The association is increasingly going global. There's an awful lot of activity going on in local and across different geographies as well. And so I'd like to explore that a little bit more now. And we normally would have tea if we're having a chat in the UK. I don't think there's space on the stage for a nice pot of tea, but I still would like to welcome someone to the stage that hopefully you do know very well, and that is William G. Harris for a brief conversation. G. I think I'm supposed to play David Frost. I'm not quite sure what.
Yeah, it'd be hard for me to play Nixon.
It would, wouldn't it, really? Yeah. So I think we won't quite go there. So we're going to have a little chat now, G, about various things that are happening with the association. But I guess the first question I have for you really is, why is the world coming to ATP?
It really starts with volunteers and our member organizations, but we've created a platform that allows us to be a resource for looking at common challenges and common issues around testing and the delivery of assessments. So I think in some sense, without our volunteers and member organizations creating that foundation for us, we wouldn't be reaching around the world right now. But the nice part about testing is that testing has a common language as well. We all want to build professionally developed tools. We all want those tools to be fair and defensible in terms of the practice of testing. And we certainly want test takers to have a positive experience. And that means an experience that is free of error and free of, when I say error, in terms of how the tests are delivered and how the tests are processed. ATP back in 2002 had the wonderful thought of creating a tagline that says the intelligent voice of testing, and that was Lauren Scheib, our Chief Operating Officer's contribution to trying to look at our association from more than a North American perspective. And we believe that the intelligent voice of testing represents a borderless view of the world of testing.
Well, I had a chance yesterday to attend a lunch with you, actually, with a delegation from China. And talking to the people at that luncheon, there's obviously, an economy that's evolving very rapidly, a lot of change going on there, and certainly a lot of challenges, for example, in how do organizations identify, attract and acquire the right kind of talent. So maybe we want to share a little bit with the audience actually what's been happening there. But I think the nice thing about that story is it's not just about China. When we had a chat before this, it's about the fact that what's been happening in China is starting to move out broader across the Pacific Rim.
Yeah, Asia ATP is actually bigger than China, and admittedly China's big, but we also include in our Asia ATP organizations or countries like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and we're beginning to make some really nice inroads into the Australian market through the Australian Medical Council, which is a member of ATP. When we look at China as an emerging country as it relates to testing, although it has a history that goes back farther than most countries. In today's world, it's just beginning to really appreciate personnel selection. So we're doing a lot of workshops and developing educational formats to look at how to improve and to articulate best practices in terms of personnel selection. When we move over to South Korea, if I looked at your resume from South Korea, the very first thing you're going to have on your resume is your language testing score, because without that, you can't go anywhere in South Korea. And so we're in the process of developing a language testing SIG, special interest group, to really begin to take advantage of the wealth of testing that's going on in that region around language testing. And I also mentioned the Australian Medical Council. We're in the process of putting together a SIG that will look at the regulatory licensure activity around healthcare and medicine. We believe that that's a very exciting area, and we're hoping to really expand throughout the entire Pacific Rim.
that's Asia. If you just move slightly across, you know, to the west, if you like, to India. And last year you mentioned there was a lot of work going on for a model RFP document, and I guess for this audience it might be interesting to ask you a question as to why focus on that in India, but actually at the same time, you know, what's the value of that activity to people sitting here today?
Well, keep in mind, everything we do locally in any part of the world, that's just part of the initiative. The other part of the initiative is take that local activity, that local effort, and make sure that we can expand it globally. India, when we first entered the Indian market in terms of the Indian Association of Test Publishers, we asked, what is it that we could do right away? And the first thing that came forward was that we needed a tender guideline, or RFP. So over the last 12 months, with the help of Alan Thiemann, our legal counsel, we have been developing a document that is now in its final stages in terms of an RFP. It's being reviewed by test publishers in the Indian market. It will be reviewed by clients in that market, and we're hoping to get government officials to take a look at it as well. So it really becomes an Indian document. But that document actually emanates from the operational best practice document that was put forth in September of 2013, version 2.0, for the public school testing in the United States. So once again, you see the effort to take initiatives that are localized and give them global presence.
So those practices were developed in the US, they formed a model in India, but is it also true that there are government agencies in India now who are looking more closely at those operational best practices as well?
Well, the original operational best practice was embraced in part by the civil service examination authorities in the Indian government. Keep in mind, when we say large-scale assessment, we may be thinking about a couple 100,000. They're thinking about more than a million people taking the entry examination to consider whether they should be further considered for civil service employment. So they see that we had created a process that would streamline that whole effort to test, process data, make selections and decisions. And they've taken our information and tried to adapt it to their environment.
That's cool. Now that's having an impact here in the US though as well, though, right? That was developed primarily for this local geography.
Yeah, Lisa and Alan Thiemann and Nikki Eckel, all of them, and a number of very impressive volunteers all got together with the Council of Chief State School Officers and developed version 2 with the emphasis on computer-based testing and technology assessments, because the consortia that are now actively involved in the next wave of public school assessment wanted a document that had some appreciation of the next method of delivering assessments across our public school system.
Now, if we move back to where my accent comes from, and a range of other different accents, a place called Europe, there's quite a lot of activity going on there as well, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to believe that we've already done 5 years worth of conferences, starting with Brussels, moving on to Barcelona, Prague, Berlin, and most recently the wonderful island of Malta. And it's been fascinating. It's been a very effective way for us to increase our visibility in a very mature market. I mean, there's a lot of associations, there's a lot of activity going on in the European market space, and we needed something that we could use to make ourselves more visible, give us more of a voice. And we were able to do that through the conferences. But now we have a wonderful opportunity using a SIG approach, a special interest approach around the public sector area as it relates to assessment and recruitment. And we're fortunate to have the director of the European Personnel Selection Office, David Beerfield, leading that effort for us. And we're already excited about the number of organizations around the world that have actually indicated that they'll be here for that particular SIG meeting. Just to give an example, the Saudi Arabia Civil Service Ministry is here for the SIG, but they found themselves coming early, and they found that this was a great conference to be at. So we're excited. We're excited about that. What we hope that Europe is going to do for us is that we're going to pull in the Middle East, and we're going to pull in the African nations to expand our European effort in terms of the Europe ATP.
So Europe's going to get bigger, basically.
That's our plan, yes.
By the sounds of it. The thing about the high value, actually, but the thing I think in our conversations in the last couple of days, it's not just about organisations and it's not just about ministries, is it really? I mean, this whole expansion is also about increasing the number of individuals who are getting involved with the association as well.
As I said at the very beginning, everything starts with our volunteers and our member organizations. I have two colleagues that I work with daily, Lauren Scheib, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and Pam Patel. That's only 3 of us. If it wasn't for the 100 of volunteers that you've heard mentioned early on at the beginning of this session, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. We don't go into these regions without significant encouragement from member and volunteers from those member organizations. So yes, we need a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, G, thanks for joining me up here for a
And
brief
thank you very
chat.
much for inviting me. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, William G. Harris, thank you.